Hello, today we're going to work on area of a circle, and this is going to be a review because we've talked about this in the past. In order to prepare to find volume of cylinders, cones, and spheres, we need to review how we finding the area of a circle. And our formula for the area, A for area, is pi r squared, or pi times r times r. So the formula requires us to know the radius of a circle. However, sometimes we're given the diameter. And would you please just ignore if we that's showing up in the circle? I didn't realize that was there when I copied it. So when we talk about a radius, we use a small case r as seen in the formula. And it goes from the center of the circle and it touches the outside of the circle. Now, I just happen to draw it from the center to the right, but it could go vertically up or down, or it could go horizontally. As long as it touches the center and the outside of the circle, it's called a radius. Our next thing we have to know about is the diameter. The diameter is represented with a small case d, and it also passes through the center of the circle, but it touches one part of the outside of the circle, passes through the center and touches the other part of the outside of the circle. So both endpoints are on the circle. And Mrs. Nord's trick, you might have talked about this in the past. If I draw a circle and I want to remember the difference between radius and the diameter, well, I would draw a radius and then I would make a little curve of this circle, and this looks like an R, and we've also drawn a radius. Her next trick is to draw a circle again, and this time draw a diameter that is vertical, goes up and down through the center, and then darken in this whole side of the circle. So that looks like a D for diameter, and it also has a diameter in it. So that's her trick for trying to remember what the radius and what the diameter is. So let's look at the relationship. The radius is half of the diameter. Therefore, if we're given the diameter, we can divide the diameter by 2 or multiply 1/2 to find the radius. So for this first example, they've given us the dimension, or they've given us the measurement for the diameter. So if we want to know the radius, then we have to take the diameter and divide it by 2. So that'd be 24 divided by 2, which means the radius is 12 centimeters. So our next example, once again, gives us a diameter, and we need to find the radius. So we're going to take the diameter, once again, whatever they give us for the diameter. If we want to find the radius, we have to divide the diameter by 2. So that'd be 7 divided by 2, which means the radius in this case is 3.5 or 3 5/10 inches for that same circle. Our last example doesn't give us a diameter, but it gives us a radius. And so that relationship, if I want to find the diameter, but I'm given the radius, I take the radius times 2, not divided by 2, but times 2, because the radius is halfway across and the diameter goes all the way across. It's like having two radii together. So we would put 5 times 2, and this would be 10 millimeters. So the next part of a circle that makes a circle kind of tough is dealing with the irrational number known as pi, and that's spelled as pi. It's a Greek alphabet letter, and this is what the symbol looks like. And an irrational number is a number that goes on forever and ever and has no end. So we have to figure out how to deal with this kind of crazy number. So the first way is for them to tell us that they're looking for the exact answer. And when they say that, they want us to just leave this pi symbol in the answer. Sometimes they refer to that in terms of pi, or in pi form. but I know that the module mentions the exact answer, and that would be leaving the symbol because the symbol represents all of the numbers of pi, even though they're infinite. So if I took this example with a radius equaling 5, the formula, okay, if we had area equals pi r squared, well, I would substitute 5 and square it, and then pi would be there. Area equals 5 5 squared. We'd be able to square 5, getting 25. We would just scoot the pi symbol at the end. So an answer, if we're working with area, would be area equals 25 pi. And then whatever unit of measure, in this case it was millimeters squared. The second way we might be requested to use pi, a different form of pi, is if you're requested to round the answer. If they say round the answer, this usually implies that you need to use the pi key on the calculator. And the pi key uses as many digits of pi as it can. However, that answer is very long number. We'll call it a long number. So we usually then are asked to round it, and we round final answer at the requested place value. So if we're to look at what an answer looks like, let's start where we left off. When we left the pi symbol in math, we had area equals 25 pi. And if they say round to the nearest whatever, let's make it 10th, then I would press the pi key. I would press 25 pi, or 25 times pi, and then the answer that I'm getting is on the calculator, 78 rather, 0.53981634. Now, that's not necessarily a very usable answer. We don't usually like to work with numbers that are this long, as I'll call it. So generally, for our brains and for us to have a little bit more understanding, they usually request that we round to a certain place value. So we mentioned the tenth. So this would be what? Dot the. So this is whole number, dot, and tenth. We're going to round here, and this 3 would tell this 5 to stay. So an answer could look like area equals 78 and 5/10 millimeters squared. Now, the nice thing about this answer is this is more acceptable to our brain. 78 and 5/10 is a number that makes sense. When we have a number 25 pi, our brain still has some math to do to kind of figure out what that really means. So this is convenient. It's actually the easiest form of pi to use, and we just leave the symbol there, and it is the exact answer, but for our purposes, it doesn't make a lot of sense to our brain. Where we use a pi key and then round, that makes more sense. So our final way we can method we can use pi would be to substitute 3.14 for pi if requested. And frankly, this is rarely requested on exam. They usually want you to use exact answer, or what's called in terms of pi, or they want you to use pi key and round. And this is probably using the pi key is as close as we can come with our calculator to the exact answer. So let's go ahead one more time, and we're going to do our third version. We're going to use what we started with at the beginning, area equals 25 pi. So we're going to start with that. And this time, we're going to give ourselves permission to replace pi with 3.14. But in front of it is 25. So area equals 25 times 3.14. And as it turns out, we get the same answer, and I should put both of these times, approximately 78 and 5/10. And by the way, this should have been approximately here. It's not the exact answer, so I want to acknowledge that it's not the exact answer. So an example would be that area equals 78 and 5/10, again not equals, approximately millimeters squared. So that's how many little square units of millimeters would be inside the circle. So now when we're working on these problems, we have to make sure that the formula that we're using, we have to make sure that we know whether we need a diameter or a radius. And then we have to read very carefully and figure out which form of pi we want to use. Usually they'll say what's the exact answer, or say in terms of pi, our pi form. Number two, they're not going to tell us to use a pi key. They're not going to say use your pi key. They're going to say round your answer, which implies we have to use a pi key. And then if we're allowed to use 3.14, they'll flat out say substitute 3.14, you can use 3.14 for pi. So let's practice this. Practice number one says a circle has a radius of 8 centimeters. Draw a picture of the circle and label the radius. Find the exact area of this circle. Show all steps. So we are going to draw a circle as requested. It says label the radius. So we're going to put a radius here. And they told us that the radius is 8 centimeters. So radius equals 8 centimeters. In case I need the diameter, I'd take diameter equals, and that's twice the radius. So the diameter equals 16 centimeters. So we've done the first instruction, drawn it and labeled, and now it wants us to find the exact answer. So when they say that, the exact answer of this circle, we're supposed to leave the pi symbol in the math. Also says show all our steps. So we want to acknowledge they've asked for the area of a circle. So A for area equals pi r squared. Or we could write it as pi times r times r. So now we substitute. We're not allowed to substitute for pi because they said exact answer. So pi symbol is going to stay in our math. And then we're going to multiply times the radius, which in this case is 8. And because there's another 8, or it's squared, I need to multiply another 8. And then the answer, since exact answer, the pi symbol stays in the math, but 8 times 8, we can write that as 64. And we prefer to see our rational numbers first, followed by the pi symbol. And then the unit of measure is centimeters squared. So this is the exact answer of how many square units of centimeters would be inside the circle. Practice number 2. A circle has a radius of 12 millimeters. Draw a picture of this circle and label the radius. Round your answer to the nearest tenth and show all steps. So we're going to start by drawing a circle as requested. Then it wants us to label the radius. So we're going to start, and it doesn't matter, I just tend to go to the right, from the center to the right. You can draw your radius any way you want. So I'm going to label that our radius is 12 millimeters as given to us. I usually try to identify the diameter as well in case it's needed. And so now they ask us, we label the radius, and it says round the answer to the nearest tenth. But as I look at this, it didn't say that we're supposed to find the area. So let's go ahead and say we're supposed to find the area. So the formula would be area equals pi r squared. R squared means r times r. So I'm going to leave the pi symbol in the math right now. And r in this case, radius is 12. And squared means I'm going to times that 12 again. So these are the numbers that I need. They mentioned for me to round my answer to the nearest tenth. So I'm going to take 12 times 12 times pi. I usually like to use pi last. So let's take 12 times 12 times pi. 12 times 12 times pi. And we're going to get a very long number. So the area right now, what we have in our calculators, area equals 452.2, that'd be 3, 8, 9, 3, 4, 2, 1. And this goes on, but that's as much as the calculator is capable of giving us. It did mention to round the answer to the nearest tenth. So this is what? This is a whole number. Dot, that's a decimal. And T for tenth. So we need to chop the number there. And the number behind the 3 tells it to stay or go up. Well, if this number, which I call the bossy number, is 5 or more, it raises the score. So the area is approximately 452 and 4 tenths. And the unit of measure again was millimeters squared. So that's the approximate answer. So let's read through this final problem, and then I'm going to ask you to do it on your own. A circle has a diameter of 14 millimeters. Draw a picture of the circle and label the diameter. Round your answer to the nearest tenth. Show all steps. Again, it needs to tell us find the area. So we're going to be looking for the area. So we're going to draw a picture. We're going to label, the diameter. So we have to go all the way across, right through the center. The diameter is 14 millimeters. And so get in the habit of always finding the diameter and the radius, and you can choose which you need to use. So the the radius would just be halfway across, so that would be 7 millimeters. Our formula actually uses the radius. So would you please finish this up? It asks us to round, which means we need to use a pi key. And then we'll discuss the answer when we see you in class tomorrow. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.